July 13th, 2022. I am Dr. Christopher Pullins, and I'll be your host for tonight's session. We pray that you have enjoyed the Summer Hill series so far. We've had great speakers, and I appreciate all the positive feedback that we have received thus far. And so, as always, we want to give honor to the shepherd of this house, Dr. Jonathan Logan, who has made this all possible. My co-chair of the Antioch Health Ministry is Dr. Angela Allen. And tonight we have special guests that I will introduce shortly here thereafter. But as always, we always want to start off with a word of prayer. So wherever you may be, we ask that you would bow your heads as we pray. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for another day, God, that you have blessed us to see. God, we thank you for your new mercies that are new every morning, God. And we just ask, God, that you would come in this discussion on tonight. God, we pray for our speakers. Oh, God, that you would give them words of wisdom, God, to give to the listeners, God, and that it will be things that would shed light on things that have been maybe questioned in the past, God, and that would also give them information that they can also disperse to their loved ones, families, and friends. God, we just pray your blessing, God, upon your people on tonight, God. We ask you to bless all those who are under the hearing, God, of this session tonight. We'll be careful to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. For us in your Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. So just getting right into our topic, when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about back in 1990, there was a song by a rap group called Public Enemy. And it said 911 is a joke. And it was referring to particularly in more urban settings where there was underfunding of public services. And so it was felt that you had better chance of calling the mortician than calling the paramedics by the time they got to you. But we're going to shed some truth to the emergency medical services. And we have some guests tonight who are definitely well learned when it comes to how the system works and can shed some questions that you may have had about 911 and EMS systems. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers. So tonight we have Deputy Chief Jerome Dunn, who works with the Phoenix Fire Department. He's a South District Commander. And he's been with the Phoenix Fire Department for 21 years. He's retired Air Force, and he's married with a son. And second, we have Brother James Cunningham. He's a critical care transport nurse, ER nurse. He's been an emergency paramedic. And he's also on staff as an adjunct professor at Phoenix College. And he is a married empty nester. So with that said, give a hand for our guests tonight. So Chief Dunn and Brother Cunningham, can you give us some context about the EMS system and kind of give us maybe a brief history of the EMS system?
Well, before I get started, first of all, it's a privilege to be here and talking about this subject tonight. Before I get started, though, I want to correct something. I did not retire from the military. I did 4 years, and then I separated from the military with honorable discharge. So I don't want to get called out as perpetrating. So 4 years, I did 4 years. I enjoyed it. It was a blessing to me, but I did 4 years. I did not retire from the military. But that being said, us as believers, when you start talking about the sick and injured and EMS, in particularly the sick and injured, we believe since the fall, we've been dealing with this subject. All right. If you really want to talk about the sick and injured and how they're treated, you really, some of the things that we're going to be talking about were really perfected during ancient wartime in war. All right. For the sake of time and just talking about us and what we deal with here in the United States, and in particularly what we deal here with in the Valley as it pertains to EMS, we're going to sort of focus real briefly on how EMS sort of came to be here in the U.S. in recent years. So when I say recent, I'm just talking about in the last few hundred years. So let's just go back to the Civil War. So traditionally, what would happen when you start talking about treating your injured and sick during war times, prior to the Civil War, and even up until probably the first couple of years, what would happen is when folks would be hurt badly or things like that, they actually would finish the battle. Then they would go in and treat, and many times, really, a body recovery, because no treatment was being done while the battle was being had. And if you go to that next slide, I think it talks about, or at least it'll bring up Dr. David, there he goes, Dr. Jonathan Letterman. So he was a part of the, I think it was for the Battle of the Potomac. And he essentially was like a medical director that he came up with what was deemed to be a revolutionary proposition at that time, where he took folks and established, I'm going to say, ambulance. When we think of ambulance here, we're thinking about ambulance that comes and picks you up and takes you to the hospital. But when they use it, obviously at that time, really all the ambulance is transporting you to a place where you can be treated. So he had some men at that time who were stationed with some cots in a forward positions in different areas of the battlefield, and they were able to treat real time as folks was being hurt or injured. And the crazy thing about it, what they did at that time, they actually treated both sides. They didn't care whether you were on the Union side or the Confederate side. They treated both sides. So for that time, that was a pretty revolutionary thing. As simple as it may sound, that probably would have been considered. And as I was doing my research, and there's a lot, and I have to preface this by saying there's a lot of information you could do on your own when you start doing how EMS got started. But I found several, and I think we even got in our works cited, several articles point to his developments in the Civil War as being a precursor to what we have now. So fast forward, and let's just move up to the 20th century. So from the end of the 19th century into probably about the 20th century, it was a patchwork of really, and it's funny you say mortuary, because essentially it was a transportation service until it got organized in the 70s, really. Really what you had was some funeral homes, police officers, firemen, in some cases like a tow truck driver, where essentially it was just a transportation service, and they were doing what we call an ambulance, which is just getting the sick and injured to a place where they could be treated. That's really what it was, and not very well regulated until around, I think it was 1973, that the National Academy of Sciences came out with an article and really was a scathing rebuke of where we were as a nation as far as EMS. From that article, and then some jostling back and forth, some political tug of wars, the EMS Services Development Act was developed, and that came on to be in 1973. Essentially what that did was take it away from the Department of Transportation, where it was regulated, to the EMS services, the U.S. Human Services Department. So essentially the focus left from just transportation getting you to a hospital or something where you can be treated, to actually focusing on the emergency medical services part of EMS. And then also at that same time, we had a bunch of medics who was coming back from Vietnam, who had a lot of experience from being on the battlefield. And that probably was more of a genesis to the modern time of what you see.
So you brought us up to the current, which was the 911 system that we most are familiar with. But I know that calling 911 can be daunting or cause fear in people. Mainly because they don't know exactly what's going to happen, and sometimes they just don't understand when is it appropriate, when it's not appropriate to call 911. I know that, when you, in the past, there's always that call they put out, it becomes viral. Someone called because their order at Burger King was wrong, which is obviously not appropriate, but I make fun of that, but people sometimes really don't understand what the purpose. So can you break it down and kind of tell us what happens when you call 911 and what should you be doing?
Well, when you call 911, Every 911 call here in the Valley and throughout most municipalities, most cities throughout the United States, almost every jurisdiction, it goes to a law enforcement agency dispatcher first. If you ever had the been unfortunate to have to call 911, then you get that 911 dispatcher. That is usually a law enforcement PD dispatcher who says to you, 911, what's your emergency? Once you say, hey, heart attack, something medical in nature, or fire, something not related to law enforcement, and they have several things that come up that really sort of groups your 911 complaint, if you will, into a package. And then what they'll do is, if it's medical in nature, anything non-law enforcement in nature, it goes to the fire department. All right, so that's what happens. When you dial 911, you're talking to a law enforcement dispatcher. If it's law enforcement, your complaint or whatever your issue is in nature, they'll dispatch it. It'll go out to the appropriate jurisdiction, law enforcement of the address that you give. However, almost everything else, with the exception of a few things, are going to go over to the fire department dispatch, and then they're going to take your emergency. So they'll say the same thing to you. All right, what's your emergency? And then you would say whatever it is, whether it's, hey, I'm having chest pain or what. And they got a whole battery of questions they'll go out. And one of the last things is they're getting the information to you, the information from the questions they need to ask. Then they'll say, hey, help is on the way. And then they'll give you what we call pre-arrival instructions. All right. So let's just say you said, hey, my mom just passed out and is lying on the ground and she's not breathing. Well, they'll have you maybe pre-arrival instructions may be to check your mom's pulse. Does she have a pulse? And if she doesn't have a pulse, hey, start CPR. Help is on the way. All right. So those are just in a nutshell how the 911 call is routed, depending on the issue you're having at the time.
So a lot of times people call 911 and they want to be taken to a particular hospital. And so what's the rules on that? Because sometimes people want to go to a certain hospital.
Well, I'm just going to back up one. No. Can we go back to the slide before? All right. And because I want to address this, because I didn't address this just a few seconds ago. If you accidentally call 911, and we've all done it, what you don't want to do is hang up and act like you didn't do it. All right? Yes. They have to, once that call comes in, they have to clear it. Okay? We all done seen TV. I think even on TV shows, they show if you do that, you're going to get a call back first from the 911 agency. And then if you don't pick up and explain yourself, they have to assume worst case scenario. Now they have to send someone out. They'll probably try several times, but what we don't realize, and this happens all over the country, really all over the world, but it's been a big deal. They did national stories about this because they have to clear that call. Now, if you're where I'm at, I work for the City of Phoenix Fire Department. City of Phoenix Police Department has a shortage of officers. And so can you imagine a city where we got, right around, just in Phoenix, 1.6 million folks. You start, whether it's your kids, whether you do it accidentally, you start tying up officers who have to go on these 911, accidental 911 calls, and now you have a real emergency. And they're on that. Now, obviously, the dispatcher can reroute them, but they can't reroute them in this case until they cleared that call. So you can see how officers who are short in number already can really be a wane on the system if you have a bunch of false 911 calls. So just keep that in mind. I know we all do it. We got those buttons in our phones in our pockets. We make that mistake, and now we don't want to deal with the dispatcher. We get nervous. You have to clear that call. All right?
So I'm going to come back to the hospital question, but another thing I saw on your slides was about fire trucks versus an ambulance. So when you call How do you guys decide who comes and shows up?
Well, and so here in the Valley, we have, in a lot of jurisdictions and cities, municipalities throughout the country have what we call a fire-based EMS system, all right? A lot of folks here, I'm from back east, the Midwest. My brother James Cunningham here is from the Midwest. And so, and a lot of us are here from the East Coast and even the Southeast. And so there's a lot of different 911 systems that run a different program than what we do. But we run what we call fire-based EMS, meaning that you're going to get a fire truck, all right? That's usually a 4-person truck, anywhere from 4 to 10 people, because it can, depending on the location, you could have an engine or a ladder truck and a rescue ambulance who all converge on that call at the same time, because we have what you call an automatic vehicle locator who, depending on your chief complaint and where vehicles are located, is sending the closest units with the capability of treating you throughout the valley. So that's what we have. And we also have something, and we might get into that later, called automatic aid system, which is a little bit different. It's pretty much responding without the jurisdictional borders. But anyway, we have fire-based EMS. So back in the system, let's just say somewhere like New York. Well, New York City system they run, if it's a medical call, you may just get an ambulance with some fire department support, but you're going to get an ambulance is going to give you your medical services, all right? The reason why we like fire-based EMS here is because you got a fire truck. The fire truck can deliver and really handle, it's almost like think about a Swiss Army knife of EMS service. So the fire truck can come and treat you for your medical emergency. On the way back from leaving your home, they might run into a house fire, leaving that house fire, and after they put the fire out and make sure the occupants are good and straight, now they leave that and they go to a let's just say a water rescue or a mountain rescue. They can leave that now and they go to whatever the next emergency, all right? In other words, they can handle every emergency that comes their way. So fire-based EMS, we want one truck that can handle everything, and it just makes, as far as the scarce resources we deal with, I mean, when you start trying to figure out how are you going to take care of your community, hey, when you got 4 folks on a fire truck that can really do it all, with the exception of law enforcement and a few other things, it's just really what we feel here in the Valley. And when I say the Valley, now I'm not talking about just the city of Phoenix. I'm talking about Maricopa County, with the exception of maybe a few small entities that have, unincorporated areas or the reservations or something like that. So it's just, we feel like it's a very efficient and effective system to treat the community for half the price.
So my follow-up question is, where do they take me, and how you decide on where you take me?
So, in the most convenient way, the expectation is that you're going to be going to the closest appropriate hospital. And when we say closest appropriate, there are different types of hospitals and healthcare delivery systems here in the Valley. I don't know if you've been driving around anywhere in the town, you might see a thing that says emergency, and it's a very small building. Those are freestanding ERs. Those are typically associated with a mainline hospital. So as an example, the Abrazo emergency ER, I think in Surprise, is connected to Abrazo West Valley, which is the trauma center right off of the 10. And so what you end up getting at some of the freestanding ERs is emergency services by a board-certified emergency physician, but they can only take the care so far. And if you need to get admitted, if you need specialized care, if you need some very intensivist type care, then you're going to be transferred to one of the main hospitals. As you also look around the Valley, you'll see some smaller hospitals, and it'll be Dignity Health does some of these, and it's Dignity Health, Arizona General, something. Like there's one down in Levine, so it's Dignity Health, Arizona General, Levine. That is a full service hospital. They don't do a lot of the specialty cares, but from an emergency standpoint, that type of facility is more than capable of meeting your immediate needs in terms of stabilization. And if you need to get admitted for further care and treatment, then you're going to be transferred to one of the Dignity Health hubs, typically St. Joe's. The last thing that you'll see all around town are the urgent cares. So the urgent care centers, they're typically going to be staffed with either a PA or a nurse practitioner. And they are going to be able to handle a lot of minor complaints that don't require a whole lot of intensive resources. So as an example, if you go in and you have a good sized cut in your arm that needs stitches, that can get handled at an urgent care. If your arm is hanging on by your clothing, then you need to go to one of the in-hospital ERs where they've got all of the services immediately available. So to dove that all together, you will say there are some folks that will say, well, I need to go to X hospital because that is where my insurance is, that's where my doctor is, that's where my records are. Right. Okay. In most instances, if you are not critically ill, that is something that could probably be accommodated, and that's going to be dependent on jurisdiction. As an example, if you have been and are a Banner patient over at Banner Thunderbird, going to Banner Australia isn't going to interrupt your continuity of care because all of the Banner system hospitals are interconnected and they're able to pull your records and they're able to see all of the things that need to be seen so that they can appropriately treat you. And then if you have some specialty concerns, or if you are seeing, the last example that I had to deal with was a patient that was a transplant patient. And even though they started out in a Banner facility, they wanted that patient with the transplant team at the main hub downtown at University. We are expected to take you where it is that you would like to go. On the municipal side, for the fire departments, a lot of times they want to get you to the closest hospital so that apparatus isn't taken out of service and it remains available for the rest of the community. Because I don't know if you've noticed, the Valley's a big place, and depending on the time of day, it could take you 45 minutes to go 2 miles.
So there's obviously some guidelines that tell us where you can and can't take a patient. So you talked about obvious resources, so that's a reason why you don't want to take a truck out of its community to another community just to get a patient to a hospital of their choice. But what's some of the medical reasons why it doesn't make sense necessarily to drive past 3 hospitals on the way for whatever the emergency is?
Sure. One of the primary reasons would be pediatrics. Pediatrics are a very specialized, sectioned off scope of practice, not only for the physicians, but also for the providers that are going to be dealing with those patients. And for us to make sure that these kids get the best care and get the best chance, we may have to bypass, let's say, a Banner Thunderbird that does have a children's hospital unit inside of it, but they're not able and they're not categorized to deal with pediatric trauma. So those types of patients would end up going downtown to either Phoenix Children's or to Valley-Wise, Maricopa County. Okay. The bypassing hospitals becomes a dangerous piece, not only for the patient, but also for the providers as well, because it's not just us that's on the road that's transporting. We're on the road with 1.5 million other people. And one of the reasons why we like moving the patient to the closest and most appropriate hospital is for immediate stabilization. Once that happens, then arrangements are made to move the patient to the facility where they can get definitive care.
So sometimes, go ahead.
So I do want to add one caveat to this. Sometimes it actually works in reverse. So let's just say we had a burn injury out in, let's just say Glendale. Let's say at the State, somewhere in one of the restaurants at Westgate. In that instance, someone may want to go to Australia, which is on 91st Avenue in Thomas. But if the burn is bad enough, then we can't take that patient to Australia because they don't have a burn center. The burn center is located as Maricopa, or many of us have been here for a long time, still just call it county. And so sometimes, depending on your your situation, because we have to go to a specialty hospital. We may have to pass 2 or 3 hospitals to get you to the most appropriate facility, which in the scenario I just gave is Maricopa or County Hospital. All right.
So some of the hospitals, and you talked about there's different type of hospitals. And so sometimes we hear the word level 1, level 2, level 3 trauma center. What does that all mean?
Okay, so in terms of the trauma centers, each of the hospitals will apply for a category level, and that's established by the American College of Surgeons. And with a level 1 trauma center, that particular facility, they have the capabilities of providing cardiothoracic surgeons 24/7. They have the ability of providing neuro care and neurosurgeons 24/7. They are required to always remain open and available and don't turn away anybody, with the exception of an internal disaster. So the level 1 is the highest care that's available. And it's because they have the most available resources. And when you're looking at the valley as a whole and the number of people that get circulated through the system, the amount of money that gets spent, the amount of federal funds that they become eligible for, then allow them to build up all of these specialized services so that they can take all comers without any problems or without any questions.
Yeah, that's good. So there's different type of emergency centers. I need some centers specialize in stroke, some specialize. Can you kind of talk about different categories?
Sure.
Of medical centers in general.
Okay. In the state of Arizona, the EMS is highly regulated. The state and its statutory councils and things, and the physicians that are involved in EMS systems, typically medical directors for fire departments, emergency physicians from hospitals, medical directors from some of the private transport services and air services, will all get together on quarterly to discuss stuff that has to do with scope of practice, things that we're going to do, things that are coming, issues, concerns, or problems that will allow the system to run efficiently. The state then sectioned off Arizona into 4 different regions. Here in central Arizona, this is the Ames region. In southern, it's SANES. In northern, it's NAMES. And in the western areas, it's called WACMs. It's out west. Right. That's what it is. And so here in the Ames region, what they have done is that they have said if a hospital wants to open up and a hospital wants to take EMS or ambulance patients fresh from the scene, they have to go through what's called categorization, where they have to demonstrate that they're able to effectively meet the patient's needs in the areas that they're looking to get categorized in. And so that's where we get lists of generalized hospitals. We get lists of cardiac receiving hospitals, which means that they are capable of maintaining, stabilizing, and performing some fairly advanced diagnostics, like a diagnostic cardiac catheterization, to be able to mitigate a patient having a heart attack. There are stroke centers. The stroke centers then, if they get categorized at the stroke center, they confirm that they're able to provide neurologic care. They're able to provide a CT and/or an MRI to be able to appropriately diagnose a stroke, and they have the capability of delivering TPA or a clot buster to begin to resolve the issue. Comprehensive stroke centers are hospitals that have demonstrated the ability not only to do everything that a receiving stroke center can do, but then they have neurovascular surgeons and endovascular surgeons that can actually go after it and get it.
So for the sake of time, I believe that in the handout, some of this information is included, but for our online audience, I know you put some slides to the different stroke centers, the cardiac centers, and so we don't have time to go through each of those, but if you don't mind just to scroll through that, I'm talking to the media team, just to show for people who are wondering, looking at the medical facilities that you live around, what are they categorized? Are they stroke centers or cardiac centers? Because time is of essence when it comes to some of these medical emergencies, and we call it the golden hour, which is the time from the time you have an event to the time you receive care. and obviously the longer it takes for you to get care, the outcomes go down far as they're more negative outcomes. And so definitely know your facilities. I think they just want to take home messages. We want to make sure that you understand what we have. I think you also had about level 1, level 2s. Again, if we can go slowly through those slides, and so you can see what is around you. I think the level 1, as Brother Cunningham told us, Chief Dunn pointed out, is the highest level. And then obviously those with children, you want to know where your children should go. And so I think these slides here are kind of touching base. And if you want to add on something to that, please do.
I think anything that I would add, when you look at the trauma centers, it's really the highest level when you think of trauma are facilities where you are going to be able to get immediate intervention and immediate surgery. Okay, when we get down into the level 3s and the level 4s, those are going to be stabilization and then moving you off to a facility to get definitive care. Because if you are injured and you're out in the out county area or up at the lake or that kind of thing, the closest ER is North Peoria Emergency Center. Great, get there, get stabilized, and then from there you can either be transported by ground or air to a facility that can deal with the rest of your problems.
So we talked the first night about knowing your numbers and knowing your information, knowing what meds you're on. Maybe family members, sometimes people wear information bracelets so that if they're unconscious and found. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of information in the case of emergency?
Oh, information is key. Because what's going to end up happening, as Chief Dunn had indicated, you are going to get 4 to 10 people in your house asking you questions about what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen, are you hurt, are you in pain, are you having difficulty breathing, and these types of things. And the more information that is readily available for us on a magnet on a fridge, right, inside of a notebook or a binder, or even on your cell phone, that's that much less time that we have to do asking questions, and then we can get to the business of stabilizing you and getting you to where it is that you need to go so that you can get better. The medications are key because if we know what your medications are, we know what your history is. And again, that allows us to kind of shortcut through the process. Your advanced directives, as some of us are moving through our 8th and 9th decade, we want to make sure that you are clear on what it is that you want to have happen, what it is that you don't want to have happen, and that it's easy for us to understand that and to be able to respect that. The expectation is when you call EMS, we are going to come, we are going to evaluate, we're going to assess, we're going to treat, and then we're going to transport. And depending on what your advanced directives are, that might not be the case. We might not do everything that we're capable of doing because it's stuff that you don't want to do. And what we want to do is be able to, as respectfully as we can, take care of you to the extent that we are capable of.
So I want this talk to be as practical as possible. So if I was your buddy or your family member and I said, knowing what you know, where should I keep my medication list, my advanced directives, where should I have that stuff, whether I'm at home or if I'm out in public doing whatever? What's, from your standpoint, when you've been to these emergency settings, what would be most easy for you guys to do what you need to do?
The most convenient place to put that stuff is on that computer in everybody's pocket. Each of the major carriers has an in case of emergency function to it, where you can enter in your information, you can enter in your medications, you can enter in your next of kin or your first contact or who it is that you want notified. It gives us enough information to get started because if you're not at home, nobody knows who you are. And so for it to be practical, the best place to put that stuff is right inside that. Apple's is the medical emergencies. For the Android, there's an in case of emergency app that's built into the phone. and it allows us to see it even if your phone is locked. So if you can't give us your password, we can restart your phone, and it will give us the SOS emergency button. We'll hit that, and then we can see enough information to get things started. Because the last thing that you ever want to do is to end up in an ER and nobody who loves you knows where you're at.
I want to add something too. I'll go ahead and let you finish because I want to add it's something that's related to this as well.
Sure. So I want to just make sure everybody understands. So there's something on your phone that you can go in and put your information. Particularly, there's an area where you can put your emergency contact. Let me tell you how this works. So Charlotte and I, or Dr. Pullins and I, were in Maui. This is a couple of years ago, and she lost her phone in a random place, and a person found her phone, and because she had me listed as her medical emergency contact, even though the phone was locked, was able to call me and let me know they had her phone. So, and that wasn't a medical emergency, but if it had been, that would have worked. So I know it works, and so I definitely want to encourage to take what they're saying and actually do it tonight, this week, is to put that information into your phones.
In the handouts in the back, I think there should be a handout for both an Apple or an Android, depending on what phone system that you have.
That's great.
And, in full disclosure, while we were putting this presentation together, I didn't even have that on my phone. Brother James Cunningham, and I've been in the fire. Yeah, it's embarrassing, okay? But I didn't even have that on my own phone. And so he walked me through the process and things like that. But yeah, I didn't even have that on, but that's very important to have because it's like you said, and we've had this. I've actually had to treat several patients over these 20 plus years, 21 plus years who had that exact same scenario. Phones locked, they're by themselves, unconscious, we're taking them to the hospital. It may take their family days to figure this out. So now that we know better, we should do better. All right. So I had to this happened just 2 weeks ago. All right. As we were working through that slide, I said, well, I need to get this right. So me and him walked through that process. I want to add one thing though, as far as this goes, something else, especially for those in our community, whether it's in our church or someone you all know who deals with chronic medical issues and they live alone. What happens many times when the fire department comes, they can't access your home. All right. And so if you're not able to open the door, then many times we got to bust in. All right. If you don't have a key or something and that's been identified in the call where the dispatcher lets us know this is where your spare key is or something like that. What I wanted to tell you is almost every jurisdiction inside of Maricopa County has a fire prevention section, and they have a service called Knox Box. So essentially what it is it would be somewhere of your choosing outside of your home, apartment, or whatever, where we can come put in a code that you give us, and we can get inside that box, get your spare key, and get inside your home so we can treat you. Now, it's not free. All right. But they do have, I want to make that, it's not, you can't just call and, hey, come and hook me up with the Knox box. But what they will do, they can work with you. And I can't remember what it costs. It's probably a few $100. But if you deal with chronic medical issues and you live by yourself, all right. And especially if your closest family, you have these issues and your closest family member lives out of state. It would be, very unfortunate if you don't take advantage of something like that your own city, your own municipality offers you. So if you have that or you know somebody who does, help them get in touch with their fire prevention. That's a part of their fire department. So if it's Peoria, you would want to talk to the fire prevention section of Peoria Fire Department and vice versa for any city you live in.
That's great information. Can you talk a little bit about some of the resources that maybe you would recommend to the audience members, both here and online?
Well, so what we did was, you want to explain this?
So every city fire department, so whether you live in Peoria, Sun City, Glendale, Phoenix, Goodyear, Avondale, whomever. All right, every one of them will have a community health or community services section. On these right here, and you can get, they'll offer resources and tips to dealing with fire extinguishers, grills, outside stuff, what to do if you go camping, fire prevention outside, deep frying that turkey so that you don't burn your house down, all right? Because all of that stuff is there, and each city will have a section of their site. So for these are resources that are made available through Peoria Fire, okay? And so if you want to hit the QR codes, it'll take you right to things in terms of fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, and pool safety, which are the three biggest things. As the chief will tell you, smoke detectors save lives.
They've saved way more lives than any fireman could ever think of. Okay. Smoke detectors. When the battery is needing to be replaced, so that chirping that gets irritating, yeah, that ain't the time to just take the battery out. That's the time to replace the battery. If it's not backed up, even if it's backed up, if you have a hardwired system, you should have the battery back up. But yeah, if your remote control for your TV needs a battery and it uses the same one as a smoke detector, that's not the time to take the one out of the smoke detector. You need to drive down to CVS and get you some batteries for your remote control. So I just want to touch on a few things because I get these questions a lot, and I think some of you all out in the audience have asked me about these different things over the years. So like we just said, smoke detectors, that's a big deal. Every home should have at least one smoke detector. Make sure you're changing the batteries out every so often. I would say I try to do mine at least every 6 months, and definitely if you're hearing the chirping, get you an ABC, pretty much a general purpose fire extinguisher. You should just a small one. Now I will tell you this. So we do campaigns like you'll see like in the city of Phoenix or in the city of Peoria where we do these smoke detector campaigns. But generally we'll have a slew of smoke detectors where we do some walks and hand them out. And most fire departments are going to have some. They'll be able to give them to you. But I can tell you it may not, depending on where you live at, they may not have just smoke detectors that they buy in bulk like a city of Phoenix. So you may, I wouldn't necessarily count on being able to walk to your local fire department and them just giving you a smoke detector. Obviously, most homes, apartments, things like that have it. But if yours doesn't have it, like I said, the smoke detectors is a proven fact. They save way more lives than we ever could think of. All right. So you definitely need a smoke detector. Definitely have a fire extinguisher. Obviously, most fires are in the kitchen. That's a fact of life. That's where we do most of the cooking and things like that. And give the opportunity for things to catch fire. So definitely want some kind of like ABC rated, really almost an all-purpose type fire extinguisher somewhere in and around your kitchen. Just look at the fire and life safety tips. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. I would just say, just make sure you hit these QR codes and look at the different resources that are out there on that. And pool safety, some of us who are, whether you have a pool or whether you take your kids or things like that to the different pools. Park. Yeah, the water park. That's a big deal. I mean, obviously out here we get an enormous amount, of drownings here. And it's a shame. It's heartbreaking. I've been on several of these calls over my 21 plus years in Phoenix Fire Department, and to go on 2 and 3 year olds to that have suffered this kind of, in some cases, serious injury. In some cases, they have died. And, I'd tell you, dealing with these kind of things, the home is never the same. All right. So something that is meant to bring pleasure to the family, to the kids, to, the neighbors can turn into the worst thing ever imagined. And, I don't even, want to think about it. But unfortunately, when we don't pay attention to the just simple safety tips, when you go out, and I'm going to stay here just for a few seconds, because this one right here probably has one of the calls I've dealt with on a number of occasions that has affected me more than any other call I've went on. When you are going to go out with you and your kids to a pool and have water activities, whether it's a water park or your own pool, all the safety tips say one of the first things they say is to the adult is there's nothing else more important during that time that you're around them and that water and that kid. Not your cell phone, not the TV show, not the food that you're making inside. You really have to be that focused. All I would have to do is to play the scream of the mothers who had to deal with this that I've ran on. And obviously, I can't do that. But I can tell you some of those things still go through my head to this day. So I never want to see that for, any of us in here. It's just one of the worst things you could have to deal with. So pool safety, definitely hit that QR code, especially if you have a pool or you do a lot of water activities with your kids. Obviously, my son, he loves water. My wife does a lot of water activities with him, but this is just one where you take the time. All of them are important, but definitely if you're a person who likes to swim and do water activities, hit that QR code and just learn simple life safety tips. All right.
Can you, and we're going to have a Q&A section, so definitely hold those questions. We'll get to you in a second here. Staying on that thing, preventable things. So I know a lot of times you get called on things that could have been prevented, whether it's the pool safety and watching a child, whether it's locking a child in a car, whether it's going out and hiking and you're not prepared, whether it's driving through a wash when you shouldn't. Can you talk about some of those things? What kind of guidance, which you've kind of learned through the years?
Well, right now we're going through those of us who've been in the valley for any period of time, this is our winter season right now, okay? We 110s plus, we can sit here, for, until God give us relief, okay, with the weather we're dealing with right now. So, but you wouldn't, believe it or not, we still have avid, and I'm hiking that goes on here. Hey, I love to hike, all right? But doing hiking, and matter of fact, can we go to the slide real quick? Because I think it would be better if I just go over some of the city of Phoenix on the right here. So the city of Phoenix, just some of they have this right on their website. That's what we took it off of. I took it off of our cityofphoenix.gov website right here. And I just want to go over it real quick because, look, a lot of times you get folks, and we don't have this a lot of times with folks here in the Valley. Normally, we know what to expect, when to do these things safely. Use good common sense and wisdom when accessing our city parks and our hiking trails here. But I just want to briefly, just because it's pretty short, but I think it's a few things in here I want to just highlight. So as you can see right here, it says more than 200 hikers annually are rescued from our city of Phoenix desert and mountain parks and preserves. This simple checklist can help keep you from becoming a statistic. So watch the weather. Yes, it's a dry heat, but Arizona temperature can be deceiving and deadly. Hike when it's cool outside, but early in the morning and evenings. Hike when it's cool outside, try early in the mornings and evenings when there's more shade. And so just real quick, there is absolutely no reason the parks here in the city of Phoenix, majority of them, once the temperature goes past 105 degrees, they're shutting them down. But you wouldn't believe this. We still have people that go out there and sneak in there on their own, okay, and hike and then not prepared, all right? And then we have to go rescue them. All right. So, yes, people still, even with the things I'm talking about, we still deal with this where folks just don't use good common sense. So it says dress appropriately. This is wear proper shoes, clothing, hat, and sunscreen. Hydrate before you go. Have plenty of water, more than you can think or need. Turn around and head back to the trailhead before you drink half of your water. Carry a mobile phone, and it doesn't say this right here, with a full battery. Now, here's the thing about our cell phones. They get hot, all right? So have that phone next to wherever you keep that cool water at, all right? Because if you don't, it'll get hot, and then it's pretty much inoperable. Hike with others. If hiking solo, tell someone where you're at and where you and the times and location. This one right here. Be honest. Do you have a medical condition? Asthma, heart problems, diabetes, knee or back problems? Don't push yourself. Even trained athletes have been caught off guard by getting dehydrated and on Arizona trails. So my fire station that I was at for many years, where I was a captain of, Fire Station 17 off 16th Street in Missouri, is first due to Squaw Peak Mountain. All right. So What that means is when I say first due, that means when a 911 emergency is called, our truck is, unless we're on another call, is the closest to that mountain. And any of you who've done Squaw Peak, that's a serious mountain to hike. And so I've had the pleasure. I mean, I like hiking, so we've had many mountain rescues on the middle of Squaw Peak Mountain, at the bottom, at the base of the mountain. We've had some at the top. I've had folks who have died on the mountain, and it turned to pretty much a body recovery where we were bringing them down. Look, people have medical emergencies, all right? And I want to discourage someone who's an avid hiker from doing this. All that really saying is just do it. Use common sense and wisdom when you use these type of recreational activities. It's fun. I like hiking. It's a very, to me, it's stress relieving. It helps. I mean, it's a heck of a workout. All right, but you need to be smart when you're hiking. And so, like I said, we've had to rescue top flight athletes off the mountain because you might break your ankle or twist your ankle or something like that. People get injured. Accidents happen. But what I like, to be honest, what they don't have in there, what kind of shape you're in. Okay, I wish, as far as I'm concerned, I wish we had something where we can put you through some kind of hiking test, before you go up, especially like the Camelback and Squaw Peak, because those are very strenuous mountains to hike. And if you've never hiked a mountain before and you started a new workout program and you just heard that these mountains are tough to do and now you're going to go hike them, there's other hills and smaller mountains with lower elevations and not as strenuous that you can sort of work your way up to the more difficult mountains that we have. And it says, don't trailblaze. In other words, don't get off the trail. We have trails that folks have walked up and down. There's a lot of wildlife, snakes and different things out that, sometimes they come right, sometimes it happened even with me where snakes they'll just slide right down the trail, let alone if you're out in the places where you're really not supposed to be. Stay on the trails. And it says take responsibility. Don't be that person, the one who wasn't prepared, shouldn't have been there for health reasons or ignore safety guidelines. Be the responsible hiker who takes a hike and does it right. So these are just simple things. I got it right off the cityofphoenix.gov website. I just thought it was important because, like I said, I know a lot of us I ain't gonna say a lot, but I know a few of us here at the church hike, and who knows who's watching here. And most of us do a good job. A lot of times it's folks who are coming from out of town and things like that who haven't did their homework. So just want to hit this little bit in that pool safety because these are things that good Lord, I think we had some on the news today just about a drowning. So those two things I wanted to hit a little bit more.
I also think that when we're talking about the weather and the hiking and that kind of thing, it also holds true for other outdoor sports like golf. Let's make sure, that we're appropriately hydrated, that when your friends and family come in from out of state that, it's just Arizona. 90 degrees in Arizona is hot than 90 degrees elsewhere. And most folks will overestimate their ability to deal with the heat and will underprepare. And so it's not just hiking. It's anything it is that you're going to do this time of year outside.
That's a fact.
Yeah, we as golfers, we've run into people, at least I have, got sick and nauseated. I mean, there's signs, and not really need to get into that, but there's signs that you should be aware of that you're getting dry. And so if you're starting to feel sick, nauseated, headache, that's not the time to push through. That's the time to go home, get some cold water in you. Changing topics, but similar on the prevention. We're in an age of increased active shooters now. And I know at my place of employment, I'm sure any place that you're at, they've all kind of had these training. Okay, what do you do in the time if there was an active shooter? So if I see this slide, if you want to kind of just go through that here.
Well, so first of all, I want to do a disclaimer. This is something that we need to have, as our Dr. Logan and Pastor said, legitimate authority on this subject here speaking to. I just added this because I had a couple of questions about it. Originally, when we start dealing with some active shooter in our organization, this is some of the training that came out of it. I didn't get this from our organization, as you can see, but my wife, who's a teacher, and just dealing with some of the things that have been going on, constantly throughout, our country here in the last several years. I just brought this out. I want to say the disclaimer again, though. We need to have someone from Peoria Police Department, law enforcement speaking to this, because I can tell you, if something was to happen, fire department has to be cleared by law enforcement before we can come in and start treating. All right. So I just pulled this out. I'm actually not going to, I will let you all read it. You can see where it's run, hide, fight. I'm sure this has been a national campaign, so I'm sure many of you have already seen this slide. But as I was just doing just some minor research, there's so much data, information. I go through a lot of training around this subject. I've dealt with some active shooter situations, even here in Phoenix, on calls in the last few months. So I just pulled this up. So just to give you some general information, and really, this is just probably what we need to do. And our leadership can, we could talk about this at another time on how we get somebody to, if we want to do that, bring in to our church and really talk to the congregation about this subject. But this is really something I just wanted to just bring up real quick and just say, really, I'm not the authority. We're not the authorities on dealing with this. Is more of that law enforcement. You have this issue, that's one of those kind of things. You call 911 with this issue, they're not transferring you to the fire department. They're keeping this one. Law enforcement, this is their purview right here. So I know I had a few questions about it. I won't go into it because I'm just not qualified to speak to this. This is the general information that you can just find on the internet.
So I would like to transition to some questions and answers, and so definitely have those ready because we want to answer, and we'll also see if there's some questions online. But before we do that, I just want to, one of our audience members is Sister Cynthia Sanders, and she's newer to the Antioch body. People may not know who she is, but she actually deals and is an instructor when it comes to CPR, and she even has her own business. So I'm just going to ask her if she doesn't mind having some words right now about emergency services and who she is and what she does.
Thank you, Dr. Pullen, and good evening, Antioch family, and to our folk out in the audience in the Podland. My name is Cynthia Sanders, and 27 years ago, I worked for CDC in a community in Memphis, Tennessee called Binghamton. And in that community, we decided to do something about the help for those folk. One of the things that came to play was to do first aid and CPR. We had to find a vendor. So my job was to actually find some people to do that. When I found a gentleman to do it, he was with Heartbeat, he was a fireman. They decided that, hey, you're in the community, you need to be an instructor. So 27 years ago, I started on this quest, and I have been a certified instructor ever since. In 2009, when I moved here, after I moved here to the Valley, I was doing some training for someone else. And my sister-in-law, who is a judge, said, why don't you just open your own business and do it for yourself? And that's what I did. I formed a company called Life is Precious Training Center. And I actually do first aid and CPR training in the greater Phoenix area. And it's a little specialized. I do it as a mobile on-site service, which means I can actually come to your home, small groups, churches, etc. So I can do one person or I can do 100 people over time. And that's what makes it so specialized. One of the things that I do want to share with you, my company has been around for about 15 years, and I have trained thousands and thousands of people. My center's slogan is, be ready to act, for life is precious. And lastly, I want to just leave you with this. Before the EMS get there, people always wonder, what should we do? Becoming first aid and CPR certified will give you some of the steps that you need to do to be prepared to pass on the information when the experts get there. And you being there to help that person in an emergency may be the difference between them living or dying. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Pullens, if I could, with respect to Sister Saunders, CPR compressions save lives, okay? if you are trained and are able to do it, because it's going to take us at least 5 minutes to get to you. In that 5 minutes, if someone who was trained is able to begin chest compressions, that will make a difference. There's going to be a greater likelihood that when the experts get there, the things that we do are going to be effective. The research shows that when there is bystander CPR, there is a greater likelihood of a positive outcome as defined as getting discharged, going home, and being 75% functional of where you were before the incident. So if you can, get yourself trained, get yourself certified, because it makes a difference. It saves lives.
That's a fact. I would concur that if you can, and we have this, Sister Cynthia Sanders right here in our congregation, who has her own business, who's certified, thousands of people. And is up to date with that. I mean, we were talking, and we actually used to teach CPR as well. We let that certification lapse. And so definitely take advantage of it. We have it right here. I'm sure she's very flexible and can work around different schedules and can do groups individually. And normally nobody really offers individual training like that. So definitely if you're not certified at CPR, definitely give Sister Cynthia Sanders a call.
And I do want to add that Sister Cynthia Sanders has been recruited to the health ministry here at Antioch. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity for her to have a course sometime this early fall. So thank you. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure she shared.
I have a question. So a few years ago, I lived in a home that had a gas water heater, and we actually had like a leak. So you didn't mention anything about a carbon monoxide detector. Do you guys teach about that? Because had it not been for that, unlike a smoke detector, you can't smell it, you can't see it. And we ended up calling the fire department, and that was really what saved our lives. So that's something that I think some people probably need to know, like me, or how you get that information.
Right. And I mean, you said it. I mean, you got a gas water heater. Yes, you need to have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. All right. And matter of fact, many of them have the dual. You'll have both the smoke detector and the carbon monoxide. But I would even have it separated. But yes, you do. We didn't speak on that. But yes, if you have a gas, even if you don't have a gas heater, then I would still have a carbon monoxide. It's just, most new homes have them and things like that. So yes, you are correct. And you have a testimony. I mean, if you not had that, then the outcome could have been deadly. So yes, thank you for reminding us.
I just have a question for Chief Dunn there. Sir, I've noticed with all the new builds with the homes in the valley, I was talking to my brother, and he was talking about how with the new homes out in California, they now have to have a sprinkler system in the homes. Is that something on the horizon here in Arizona? I see these houses are close together, so if one go up, it's going to go down the trail.
Yes, yeah. And forgive me because I don't, as far as the rules around the new construction, I don't have that real time, and I would have to look that up. But I want to say the last meeting that I was in, where we were talking about new construction, new builds here in the valley, and in particularly in Phoenix. All right, that yes, they were required to be sprinklered. Yes.
And I do want to add, somehow or another, when I bought my house, it has sprinkler systems and everything in it. So I don't know why, but that was a blessing. So good.
And I want to say for the last several years, I forgot what year, because I actually just sat in a presentation, because that's one of the things I do. I sit in a lot of meetings now that I'm in management. And so one of the fire protection chief, the deputy, the section head over that area of the Phoenix Fire Department, we're talking about the year that things were changed where the new builds have to have the new builds, the sprinkling. That's to be up to code. They have to have a sprinkler system. So yes, that is, at least in Phoenix, what the code is requiring.
We have 2 questions online. We'll get those, and then if you have any other in the house, then please ask those.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we have two questions. One is, my bedroom is in the back of the house. Should I rely on a hammer to break a window in case of a fire, or is there something else I should have, especially if there is safety glass in my windows?
So the number one thing, and matter of fact, I could just ask the audience, if you have a fire in your house, what's the most important thing fire safety tips tell you to do? What's the first thing you need to do if you have? Get out the house. By any means necessary. And we say that to kids that are 4 years old. We say it to seniors, and when we do presentations at senior centers that are in their 80s, 90s, same thing. I would just say, because without really coming and looking and sort of inspecting what you have, then, I can't give you that kind of detail. In this situation, I would need to see what you have, but get out by any means necessary. If the window is the closest and you got smoke coming underneath your bedroom door that's back in the house, then you get out that window any way you can. That's, just keeping it general. That's just, and this is what we teach. Get out the house by any means necessary. We can replace anything else in there, but what has a heartbeat. So get out the house, get you, your children, get everybody out the house by any means necessary. All right. And if you only got one way out, that is, that's when you really have an issue. All right. So what I would just say is just whatever you have to do to get out that house, whether that's you have a hammer, whatever you have to get that window open, that's what you use to get out if you can't walk out. All right.
And I want to add, after purchasing a home, the appraiser looks at the home and says everything is safe. Then we beautify our home and make adjustments such as block glass, etc. I appreciate the fact that you mentioned just by any means necessary get out the house. So I'm hopefully encouraging people, look at every room you're in, and I think the audience said it. What is this escape plan? If something happens, look for that escape plan, and if you don't have it, that means you have to do some readjustments to your house.
All right, and we had that up there, and we only had the QR code, but yes, you do need to have the escape plan, and like I said, every presentation I've ever personally gave, the first and the last thing I'm saying, you have a fire, we make all the kids say it, get out the house. But going into that fire plan, yes, covering up windows and just things like that, escape routes, we shouldn't be doing that. All right. And so, and if you do that, you need to have a plan, because you essentially just cut off a possible exit of you getting out your house. All right. So, hey, these are your homes, or you get to decorate it the way you want. I can just tell you that it's not a good idea for covering up a potential exit. All right. So definitely putting things that cover up windows wholly where you can't access it, it's just not a wise thing to do. All right. So, look at those fire safety tips. It'll talk to you about this. You can get on there and peruse the internet. There's so much information about, how to develop a safety plan, how often to practice it with your family members, or even if yourself, you live at home, just doing some simple practice with it, not just making it the safety plan or the escape plan, but actually practicing with your family, every 3 to 4, 6 months, just so everyone knows, because fires tend to happen at night at 2 a.m. while you wiping, trying to get yourself together. And then if you don't have that plan that you've practiced, chances are, you got that old saying, at least in the fire department, and we actually probably took this from the special forces, is that old saying of, well, you'll rise to the level of training. You'll rise to the level of your occasion. Well, we actually say, no, you'll sink to the level of your training. In other words, if you ain't practice it, don't think. Now, don't mean God can be gracious and give you a burst of energy and clear your head, but most of the time, if you have not trained with it, then when you need it the most, that's when things can get even more cloudy. All right. So.
if we can go into our question number 2 from online.
All right. Doc, we have one more online question after this one.
Okay.
It says, there was a PSA that suggested when hiking and get lost, change the outgoing message on your voicemail to tell whomever calls of your last location and any other info that can help locate you in case your phone dies. Is that a good suggestion?
I can sign off on that, but it sounds wise to me. I guess the wiser thing to do is not be in that situation. Like we talked about the safety tips a few slides ago, but I haven't heard of that, but it actually sounds a little, in a dire situation and your battery is about to go out real soon and you're in a tough situation, you're not going to have use of your phone. Why not? I can't, I'm speaking for Jerome Dunn here, not the City of Phoenix Fire Department on this one, because that hasn't been vetted, but yeah, it doesn't sound bad. And they said that they actually got that information, hopefully from a trusted source, but doesn't sound bad to me. I just can't verify it or anything like that. I would, need to look at that information and look it up myself and actually talk to some folks in my organization before I would sign off on something like that. But it just me as a human being, speaking for myself, it sounds like, at that point, why not?
All right. And then our last online question. If I had a medical emergency and I live down the street from the fire department, should I drive there or call 911?
You would have to define down the street. No, I'm being serious, right? You can say down the street, and some of these streets, it could be 2 or 3 miles before you get to it, depending on where it is that you live. In any instance, your best option is to stay where you're at and to call 911. One of the benefits of the way that the system is set up in Maricopa County is that the density of fire engines with personnel on it is much greater than that of available ambulances. And so anytime that you pick up the phone and dial 911, there will be somebody at your doorstep in probably 4 minutes and 59 seconds, okay? And because there's an all hazards response, because you have 4 personnel on that apparatus, they will be able to get started and to stabilize you. And then, you can collaboratively make that decision if you need to be transported. And so the best option is if you're feeling ill, call 911, because here's the thing. Again, because we're such a busy system, you can go to that fire station and there's nobody there because they're out doing other jobs. Stay home, pick up the phone, dial 911, and then follow the instructions that you get from the emergency dispatcher.
Did the person say, should they drive to the fire station?
Yes.
Yes, okay, yes. I 100% agree with everything that Brother James Cunningham just said. Yes, you don't drive to the fire station. The bottom line, if you're having an emergency where you think you need to drive to the fire station, you need to call 911, all right? So, yes, don't think about driving to the fire station, because every fire station in the valley, especially in the city of Phoenix, is very busy. You can go there and nobody can be there. Now you add time on first of all, whatever issue you got, and then someone trying to get to you. And let's just say if you have a legitimate emergency, now you just got in a motorized vehicle. Okay, what if you pass out, whatever you have going on gets worse, and you could possibly victimize someone else while you're on the road having a true emergency. All right, so if you think you need to drive to the fire station, you need to call 911. All right. And govern that appropriately. All of us in here, I think most of us are, know when they're having a legitimate emergency. Most folks probably wait too long, all right, before they call 911. There are instances where folks, just always got something going on and they maybe, use the system maybe inappropriately. But most of us probably wait too long than too soon.
I just took my ACLS course actually last week, and whoever asked that question, they just gave the answer to the question on one of those questions, because it says if you have any cardiac issues, chest pains, you have any, do not drive, call 911. So we gave the answer to one of your CPR classes, Sister Sanders. May I throw in one more thing, Dr. Pullins? Earlier, the speakers pointed out your phones, and I appreciate Chief Dunn mentioning that he had not checked his phone. And I was in the back when you started, and I said, let me see if I did this right. So I have an iPhone, and I actually checked to make sure. So for those who are in the house, you cannot leave this building until I check your phone to see that you have got that you have your set. You said, and honestly, I'm being facetious, but actually, you have experts here, myself and the others and the speakers. Let us check your phone and let us make sure that you're able to set that up, because I think that's so important. It is, and I think the term ICE, when you put that next to individual's name in case of emergency, I have 4 people that I have on there. That's very important. So thank you for sharing that. I think that was important. I wanted to make sure we shared that.
That's a really important piece for me, as I've treated people and have had to move people in between hospitals to a higher level of care. So what it is that I do primarily is I'm getting the sickest of the sick. I'm getting patients that have been intubated, they're unconscious, they're on multiple medications and things, and they can't speak for themselves. And there was, somewhere in the valley, there was a golfer who was out with his buddies and had an episode, hit the ground. His friends called 911 like they're supposed to, got him to the hospital. Unfortunately, it wasn't a stroke center. They diagnosed the patient with a stroke and then set up the transport. And meanwhile, this patient is in a room by themselves. No one knows where they are. No one knows, they know who he is. There's no information as to how to get a hold of anybody. And so then we come and pick this patient up now to take them to another facility. So now there's 2 points of contact. So still, nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows how to get a hold of family. As it turned out, I was able to do some sleuthing on the way through and was able to get a hold of a family member to this patient so that they would be able to know. But it's, again, the scariest thing to happen is to wake up someplace around a bunch of folks that you don't know, that don't look like you, and your people are nowhere to be found. And so it's absolutely important, if we're going to take care of you correctly, and if you're going to be taken care of appropriately, that there are ways that folks can get a hold of the people that are important.
So all of us should leave tonight with that done. Doesn't take long. Takes less than 5 minutes to do that. So those here and those online, please take heed of the information that was shared today. I want to give applause to Chief Dunn and Brother Cunningham for giving us critical information that's necessary to have for any emergency that we may come across here. I do want to, before we hand it over to Dr. Logan, so hopefully everyone has their raffle tickets.
Yeah, can I
Yes.
just have a
Yes.
quick word?
Yes.
First, so thank you, Dr. Logan, for the whole health series that you provide. This is, I still have friends who I've, sent different Wednesday night services on who have enjoyed this, and my family members who are all back east, a few of them have tuned in. But I want to say, and I got it, because the first slide didn't do him justice. My brother in arms, my fellow Isom brother right here, Brother James Cunningham. So me and Doc start having this conversation probably on the golf course at the end of last year. And when I got tasked to do this, it really came to Dr. Pullins and start talking about, hey, it's probably time for us to talk about some stuff related to EMS again. The first person, once we got approved that we would have a night, I reached out to my brother here. Y'all remember about 3 or 4 years ago, I reached out to him at that time to do the CPR class that we deal here. We did like sort of an intro CPR class, but he's always helpful. He works he's not just a paramedic, but he's also a nurse. So he's a paramedic, he's a nurse. He's ran several EMS organizations, and I mean ran them, being in charge of them. He is in school. He's almost done 6 months away from his MBA. So he's going from the bedside to the business side of healthcare. And then he knows I'm going to blow his spot up because I'm just, when he told me this a few weeks ago, I was flabbergasted. And I told him, I don't be surprised if I blow your spot up and mention this. But he is related to the cradle of civil rights as we know it, many of us in this room. I can remember growing up, and there's three folks you heard about a lot: Rosa Parks, Dr. Martin Luther King, and the whole Emmett Till situation. His mother is first cousins and was on the farm across the way, and I'm talking about maybe a half mile. She's first cousins with Emmett Till and was there the night of the incident. That is his first, in his case, second cousin, but his mother is a first cousin to Emmett Till. So when he told me that, and I've been knowing him for years. As far as I was concerned, I was talking to Martin Luther King's son or great nephew or something like that. He just haphazardly. And so it just goes to show when, you know, the kind of folks that we have, and these stories are in our congregation. We have a lot of folks who done been through a lot, who have a lot of wisdom and a lot of information that we just don't know because many times we don't ask, we don't take the time to really dig deep and get intimacy with a person that you've been friends with for many years. And so I just wanted to give him that credit and really just, you know, I like I said, I felt like I was talking to royalty. I mean, he's a great man, strong in character, but when he told me that, I was like, wow, he just, you know, he's very unassuming and he's got so much wisdom and he has blessed me. And so in just us working on this, that I wanted to just give him credit while I was on here, you know.
Hey, Doc Pullins, real quick. We did have two online comments that just popped up that we want to clarify.
Okay.
So one said, do we just type ICE at the end of a loved one's name? Sure. Or however?
Yes. So in most of in the two major systems, when it talks about an emergency contact, it'll say emergency contact, and you'll put that person's name on that line, and it'll show up as that. To label that person also your emergency contact in your address book, you know, maybe after their first name. So for me, you know, I have Elnora, and then big capital letters wife, and so she shows up on my emergency contact as Elnora wife. So I mean, whatever it takes, or wherever it is that you as an individual are comfortable in identifying people, because most likely, you know, someone that's going to see that is going to be somebody that you know, and so they're going to see this. Oh yeah, that's his wife. So yes, we need to call her. So yes.
And then the last one is there isn't necessarily an app for ICE, correct? It's just how you update the contact information on your phone.
Inside of the iPhone, it's underneath. It's in the medical Apple Health. And there's a tab that says emergency information. For the Android operating system, it is the same thing, but it's under safety, right? Security. It's safety and security. And so those are two native apps for both of those major operating systems.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Dr. Allen, did you have?
You can also say ICE 1, ICE 2, and ICE 3. That's another recommendation. That was actually one of the police officers that was here last year who spoke. He actually said that. He said, asked us to set it up and actually identify ICE 1, 2, and 3, and also look at the relationship as well. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good, because if the person that you have, if it's your loved one, and maybe someone that you're with, and they have an emergency too, so having backup, that was going to be my next follow-up question. So thank you for Dr. Allen for shedding light on that. So next week, our topic is going to be dealing with financial matters. Dr. Allen, I don't know if you want to say something briefly about the speaker or the content for next week.
This individual works for Northwestern Investments. They're going to be talking about financing. They're talking about investments, also financial planning. We encourage those who actually have budgets or some type of financial strategies for your home or long-term strategies, to bring that information in is probably very helpful for you, so that if you are asking a question, you can look at your financial process. They will not talk about trust or anything, but just more investments and also financial planning. We'll also be encouraging our FPU members, anyone who's in the Financial Peace University from Antioch. If you are in-house or if you're online, we're encouraging you to come, because we'd like to talk to that individual about some of the things that we've done here at Antioch. Thank you.
And with that being said, we will turn it over to our illustrious pastor, Dr. Jonathan E. Logan, to give us closing remarks and prayer and benediction.
First of all, I just want to take a moment to thank God for giving us so many gifted people that are able to share such pertinent information with us. Thank God for such a tremendous interview, Dr. Pullins, and these two medical and fire professionals. We're just so glad that you were able to come and share with us. Chief Jerome Dunn and Brother James Cunningham, two people who work very hard in their fields and are very competent in what they do. And I know you enjoyed the presentation, both of you that are here in house and those of you who are watching online. Let us take to heart what they shared. You never know when an emergency is going to happen. And when it's 110 degrees, 115 degrees, it doesn't take long for a fire to spread real quick. And so I want to reiterate, get out of the house at any way you can. All the stuff in your house can be replaced. Amen. You can't. And definitely watch our children around water. It breaks my heart every time I hear of that. And it only takes a moment for children to fall in the pool or jump in the pool and not able to swim and suffer loss. So we ask that you be careful. Do the preventive things that you can do to protect the people that you love the most. Also, I want to reiterate that this coming weekend is going to be a very special weekend for our youth department. The 15th through the 17th, they have a series of activities planned. If you'll go to our website, you can get the information on that. I won't take the time to try to announce that. Do they have it? Oh, fantastic. Let me get out of the way so you can see that. But we want you to participate. They're going to be having a talent show. They're going to be having a block party. They're going to be having a family and friends day on Sunday. And also on Sunday, I just want to remind you that we're only going to be having one service. I believe that service is going to begin at 10 o'clock. So come early so that you can get your choice seat, because we're probably going to have a nice crowd of people that's going to be here. But most of all, I want us to appreciate and take to heart the information that is being given. Remind me, Dr. Pullen, to make sure that I update my phone, because I don't have a clue what you're all talking about. So I would begin with someone. And I want you to know something. I'm saying that because sometimes we don't want to seem ignorant of something, so we won't say anything. So I'm giving you an excuse. I don't have a clue what they're talking about. So I'm going to say, hey, help a brother out. Amen. I would suggest that you do that. Never be ignorant of something that someone can help you with. Because guess what? You grow in your understanding, and then you can help others. And so I want to encourage you, get this information on your phone. And I noticed James looked at me when he was talking about golfing, you know. I picked that up, you know. So James, I got the point. I definitely got the point. But the good thing about when I golf, I don't golf alone. I go out with someone else, and hopefully they would know who I am and get me to the hospital. We're standing. But I'm so appreciative of all that I've heard. My lovely wife, she was so tired after doing summer camp today. And I want you to know the kids had a wonderful time. I came and talked with them today, and they were so excited. To a person, they said the camp was just fantastic. And so they'll be closing that out on tomorrow. We want to thank the parents for picking your children up on time, bringing them on time, because it meant so much to the children. Let us bow. Lord Jesus, we are just so grateful for how you have used the Summer Health Series to change so many lives and to give some very, very important information that has empowered us to be able to not only protect ourselves, but to protect the people that we love the most. Father, we ask that we would take good notes, that we would go back and watch the presentation so that we can internalize all that has been shared, so that we can not put ourselves in harm's way because of what we do not know. Father, help us to realize the procedures concerning calling 911, realizing that it's better to call 911 than to try to take matters into our own hand. Now, Father, we pray that you be with these medical professionals and the fire department personnel that have committed their lives to protecting others, the medical personnel who are endangering their lives in the middle of a pandemic to try and save the lives of others. Lord, I pray your blessings upon them, upon their families. I pray, oh God, that you would be with their leadership, that they would be able to carry out, oh God, the commitments that they've made in an awesome and outstanding manner. Now, Father, we even ask that you watch over us as we leave this place tonight and journey back to our respective homes. Let no hurt, harm, or danger come nigh unto us. Remember the sick and shut in on tonight. Remember those, oh God, who have been infected with the COVID virus. Bless that their symptoms will be mild and they'll have a speedy recovery. Lord, help us, oh God, to be vigilant, realizing, oh God, that the pandemic is not over. It has just shifted to a different type of variant. Help us to protect ourselves and our loved ones so that we can continue to be healthy and be viable in the future. Lord, we ask this now in the precious name of Jesus. And all of the people of God said, amen. God bless you tonight. Greet that neighbor. Let him know that you love him with the love of Christ. God bless you.